What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and the privilege of talking to one of the most talented, gifted striking coaches in Kansas in that Midwest game. He is the one and only, yes, head of Mosburg Boxing, Ryan 12 Gauge Mosburg. What's going on, my man?
Not much. How are you been?
Good, good. Well, thank you for doing this first and foremost, and shout out to the Riz, one Aaron
Yep.
Vincent, the voice of Walkout FC for putting us all together. But dude, uh, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
The pleasure's all mine. So, I mean, obviously, this is kind of what I like to do is to figure out like different fight scenes and what people are doing because I mean, Walkout FC and some of the the Missouri or Kansas Midwest MMA promotions, there are just as many top fighters that are getting signed to UFC and Bellator than there are in California or Florida or what you think would be the the combat sports hotbed. Literally, top flight talent is coming out of everywhere. So
Yeah.
again, you are kind of putting me in touch with the scene there in Kansas, and I mean, you're doing your thing.
Yeah, no, the Midwest is popping right now. I mean, Kansas, you got Kansas City. I live in Bella Vista, Arkansas right now, so Arkansas is kind of up on the rise. But Missouri, Kansas, like I said, Oklahoma, Nebraska, they got some tough cookies in there.
Yeah, dude. I even found out that there was like a fighting scene in Alaska, like the
Yeah.
Alaskan Fighting Championship. It's like it's booming. There's actually five promotions there, all pro, and then a litany of like amateur promotions that are killing the game there. So again, combat sports is happening everywhere. Which by the way, I gotta ask. So, how did you become kind of aware of the sweet science of boxing and combat sports in general?
Well, I started when I was pretty young. My dad says I started when I got beat up by a bully, like around eighth grade. And I was mad. And man, we always had a punching bag in the garage. So me and my dad would always hit the bag together. And then I met a professional boxer that was in our local YMCA, kind of like a legend around our small little town. And he showed me a little bit, but all he really did was show me how to take a punch. And so I learned that rougher side of the boxing. And then I met another guy in Joplin, Missouri. His name's Jeff Hines. He was another uh, stud boxer, and he just kind of showed me the ways, and I just fell in love with it.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And again, like I said, you know, literally top flight talent is coming out of every corner of the world. And like I mentioned, the Alaskan scene, the current reigning and defending Alaskan fighting champion, featherweight champion, Tyson Duckworth, is in the house. And he's like, yo, KFC in the house. So yeah, it's crazy. But obviously, I mean, this is you taking a negative into a positive, right? You had gotten bullied, and you kind of figured out like I need to do something else, right? I need to defend myself, right? And I think that's cool. But did you have like an awareness of boxing as a kid? You know?
I just kind of picked it up real fast. As I got older, I took it more serious. Uh, in high school, after I started getting the knack of it, I was kind of like, uh, I was a good kid in school, but I was ornery. Uh, so like I was never a bully, but I never backed down from anything. And it kind of went through college, and I met a lot of my real friends in college that we all shared blood because we all beat the crap out of each other on the weekends through practices and stuff. And yeah, I just kind of picked it up and just ran with it. I figured out in the long run that I was better at coaching really than I was actually fighting. Like I could tell somebody to do something and they'll do it, and it works better. But if I know what I need to do, it was just like I saw a red wall, and it just wouldn't work for me.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about the I guess not the art, but the culture of combat sports, where you don't necessarily have to be a great fighter to become a coach, or there's no linear path, right? It's just
Right.
like whatever works. Some people, they go to like they learn on their small gym and whatever, and then once they go to the big show, whether that be like WBC or Top Rank or UFC, Bellator, or whatever, then they switch gyms and go to like an American top team. Or there's
For
people
sure.
that have gotten to the same places and they've stayed with their hometown, kind of their hometown
Yeah.
coach and whatever, and they've gotten championships in said promotion. So there's no linear way. It's just
Right.
what you bring to the table, and that's what it is.
Yep. Uh, yeah, I was always boxing though, like I said. And then me and my wife, we actually moved to Hawaii for 5 years. Then like I just stopped boxing really, and I picked up jujitsu, fell in love with jujitsu. Then after that, we moved back over here. And then I picked up boxing and coaching again, and so it was neat. It was a weird process, but it's good to be back.
No, and and that's it. It's the process, right? The
Right.
process that is, of course, because you know there there are some people that want to get into fights when they're in the lap of luxury of Hawaii, but then there,
Yeah.
for the most part, you don't want to, you know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. But during your time away, did that kind of strengthen your resolve in like, man, I need to be doing this full time, and it sucks that I'm not doing it now.
Yeah, because one of my buddies that I was coaching him when he was an amateur, and actually we have a fight coming up in September in Cancun that we can talk about later. But he his name's TJ Bad News Britain. He's 6'4". He fights at 135 and 145. He's a stud. And I was watching him on TV after work when I was in Hawaii, and then we talked on the phone. He's like, "Man, it just feels weird without you being here." And me and my wife kind of talked about moving back home. And when I told him, he's just like, "Good. Now I got my boxing coach." He's like the only one that actually keeps a small, tight circle instead of going to these big gyms. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's neat.
Well, I think that's brilliant. That's so brilliant. And again, you just never know when the need that you where you could feel the need, right?
Yeah.
You saw him on TV and whatever, and who'd have thunk that you guys would mesh synergistically, that it makes it work, the whole
Right.
process work.
Yeah. And then like when I moved back, then it was cool because he I think I coached him in 3 fights, and then I got to bring him over back to Hawaii where I lived, and he had a professional kickboxing fight over there. And then we came back. He fought 2 more times for LFA, and then we actually got on the Bellator card, and he beat the #1 kickboxer in the world, Gabriel Varga, which was pretty impressive. If you don't have, a lot of people don't
That's a
think that.
that's
Yeah,
a
it's
hell of
it's a
a
huge.
feather on your cap.
Yeah, no, I think so, but
I'd say so. I'd say so. The
yeah,
number one kickboxer in the world, and you basically kind of you have a win. There's a lot of
yeah,
ways that fight could have gone, and it went your way. So
yeah,
that's not a fluke, not at all, good
right,
sir.
yeah. Thank you.
Now, obviously, in terms of the people that have influenced you, whether it be coach or otherwise, like who are some of your influences that you've, or was it something like, once the muscle memory hit you and you were able to kind of cultivate that in the eyes and the hearts of your students, right? Or the
Well,
people that you train, like where did that come about?
oh man, like I think it's when I first cornered my first friend in a fight, like, and he got that win. Like, man, I knew what he was feeling, but to me, like, he landed that move that we worked on. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that feeling was just incredible. And a lot of people don't see behind the closed doors. You work so hard with these guys, and then like I just had a kid Saturday. You know, he's a better mixed martial artist than this other kid by far. Uh, but he ended up getting just caught just right, getting knocked out. And, he keeps saying sorry, which it's like, it's not, somebody has to lose and somebody has to win. But like at the end of the day, it's like you feel so bad for your guys. Like all you want them to do is win and just feel good in front of their wife and their kids that are watching. Like it's so that's my highest as a coach. My influence is probably like just my dad. Just he doesn't do anything with this sports or any like nothing, but he's just like blue collar, just the hardest worker I know. Just a great dude.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned about hard work, right? I remember a phrase that I essentially heard on the billboard of my junior high school, and it said it takes a lifetime to become an overnight success. And you mentioned again that time, right? That time that you guys spent behind closed door sessions and putting in the work, sweating together, and what have you. Nobody sees that, but then when you get a win on a LFA card or something of
Yeah,
that ilk, then people are like, oh, whatever, but they don't know that the work that went into it. Everybody looks at Daniel Cormier and Andy Ruiz and like, oh, I'm a fat guy too. That's my champion. But like again, the
right.
amount of stuff they had to do to get where they are, you can't replace it.
Yeah. And then you're asking me about any coaches. I got a few coaches like I've always loved Jason Perillo out of California. He's like one of my top. We were actually going to go, me and TJ were going to go down there and train with Cheeto just to have the length for Sugar Sean. And then just the COVID crap and it just wouldn't work. And so we didn't get, which shout out to Jason Perillo on that huge win this weekend. But Jason Perillo for sure. Danny Molina, he's out of Omaha, Nebraska. He's Anthony Smith's coach. And then I really like James Krause out of Kansas City. He's just brilliant and just in many, just great business too. He's just smart with the business. And so, yeah,
Absolutely. And he's one of those guys, again, crazy fighter in his own right, but what he's done, in terms of his lineage and coaching in the few short years that he's been doing it, to be a UFC fighter and then also coach in the UFC, that's a nice little
yeah.
feather in your cap.
I was actually at his gym this weekend, Friday before my guy fought, and I was training with all those guys. Grant Dawson was actually teaching the class, but man, they got a lot of killers in there, a lot of studs.
Absolutely. Now, Jesse Velasquez is chiming in, and he says he can relate to you on the bullying part. He started martial arts / combat sports because of bullying when he first wanted to get back at them, but then ended up falling in love with the culture, the respect in between people, and it changed his life. And he's a much happier person in that respect. And Jesse, in his own right, is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, and an MMA champion at IFS here in California. So shout out to Jesse. And he says, I get more hyped when my teammates and students win more than I do, right? And that's something that you can
Right.
relate to for sure, right?
I agree with Jesse too, because my dad says, he says, man, if I didn't find boxing or just MMA or anything, he says, I probably would have been in a lot more trouble than what, I did get into when I was younger. That, not finding this sport or my wife, I'd probably be in jail or dead by now. Just,
That's what I oftentimes wonder, right? Especially, when you see, two guys, two gals, basically, throwing down. I mean, like sweat flying, leather swinging, whatever, those type of fights, right? And then you kind of sit there and everybody's like, whatever, right? And I'm like, what if, these people aren't here? Like, if this didn't exist, none of these
right,
people were here, like what would we all be doing? What would the camera people be doing? What would be the crowd doing? What would the judges be doing? What would the trainers be doing? What were the fighters doing? It's a multitude of different aspects of the game, but if we didn't have this one thing to kind of concentrate our essential efforts, like where would we all be?
right. That's pretty cool. I didn't think about it like that before. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, crazy enough, we've kind of gotten into this place, right, where, for the most part, you know, this whole with this COVID situation kind of forced us. I mean, the reason why I knew that it was going to be really bad is I was actually on my way to the Lights Out Extreme Fighting weigh-ins. Sean Merriman of the NFL, he co-owns a MMA promotion out here, right? And I was talking to one of the co-owners literally the day before, and he's like, "Yeah, come down to weigh-ins. We'll do interviews, blah blah blah, whatever." Right? And I get to the ballroom of the casino, and there's nothing there. Literally, no cage set up, no nothing, right? No, and I was just like, "What?" And then I essentially went ahead on Instagram and was like, "Well, due to the COVID, whatever, everything had to get shut down." Like literally while I was on my way there.
But
So,
that happened to me.
it's huh?
I had a guy fighting in bare knuckle, and we were going to do interviews, and literally like he was cutting weight. He was in the hotel room. I was 2 hours away from him driving to him, and then the promoter called me and like, hey, we can't run the show, so I had to call him, and it's just so like ugh. This happened a couple times with this kid too for bare knuckle just because the COVID crap. But man, I hate calling them, and their mindset's already right. They're cutting weight, they're ready to fight, they're ready to make money for their family, and I was just like, we're not. It got pulled again. Just I hate that part. It sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hit in a multitude of different ways. It's both sides of it. I've got friends that have basically got it, and some of their family members have passed away, unfortunately, and then there's some people that kick it. And it's
Right.
just like it's such a weird time. So I mean, in terms of where you are, right? Because that's part of doing this, right? To figure out how everybody's kind of dealing with it in their own area and region. What was the response like, and did you guys have any downtime at the gym?
So, uh, like everything was slower. So me and my wife have a 2 year old, and so like our daycare and stuff stopped and everything. So my wife, she's a nurse, so she sped up on work, and so I was staying home with. I still am, staying home with the kid, and all these gyms closed down, and so now I'm getting just lessons after lessons. Uh, so I got my own little thing out at my house, and I do one-on-ones. A lot of people call me a gypsy because I don't have a gym. I literally bounce around through Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas. I've been to Oklahoma, Texas, Omaha. I lived in Hawaii for a while, so I go back there sometimes, and I'll just train people. Whoever wants to train, I don't care. If you want to fight, you fight. You want to lose a little weight, I don't care. I'll just train you.
Well, I think that's brilliant. I was just over the weekend speaking with Noah Tillis, who basically runs a jiu-jitsu gym out here in Southern California, and he's kind of doing the same in terms of teaching privates and what have you. And
Right.
it's crazy how much a seismic shift that happened, because you were saying like how you would kind of either get not make fun of, but you were kind of looked at differently for not
Right.
having a brick and mortar gym, right?
Yep.
But in this situation, because you are so mobile and you don't have that overhead, right? You're uniquely situated in a better position than some of you know the gyms and whatever that would have been looked like as like the top tier places to go.
Right. And I don't know. I'm thinking about maybe calling one place home soon. I don't know yet. We're in talks of something maybe. So yeah. So I don't know.
Well, well, we hope that works out, because again, what you are to your combat sports community at large, but specifically where you are, going state to state and everything like that, it's a treasure. So it would be cool
Right.
for one all of your students, all of your fighters to have like this one stop shop. But then you're
Yeah.
gonna that's a catch-22 because you're going to hear some of those people like, "Oh man, Ryan used to come to my house all the time. Now I got to go, 12 miles or whatever."
Right.
So you're not gonna quill the belly aching. That's gonna happen regardless. But it's where you feel comfortable to apply your trade.
Of course. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Tyson, he's like fighting's dead in Alaska right now. He wants a fight like right now, if not sooner. And we are sounding the drum, the proverbial drum for one Tyson Duckworth. I mean, he's willing to put his 145-pound title, Alaskan fighting title, outside of Alaska and fight. So we're working on stuff.
Okay.
Hopefully, But again, that's the thing. It's like and even here in California, right? So we went through a situation where pre-March of this year, for the last 4 years, just on my and probably for a decade more, there I was going to fights for pretty much every weekend, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's it. Like there's amateur fights, there's regional pros, and then sometimes Bellator, LFA, UFC will come to LA and whatever, and we'd have that. But there was always fighting all the time, right? And then just to kind of have it shut down, we're hearing things like local regional promoters like Lights Out or whatever. The costs for COVID testing, right, for one show is $40,000.
Oh man.
Right, 40, and that's testing, and we don't know how many people are getting tested or anything like
Right.
that, and that's just a number that is getting floated around, right? But $40,000, right? That's on top of insurance that you have to get, the
Right.
venue you have to get, the officials that you have to get, flying people in, and again, how many people? Because when you look at it, just not even MMA math, but basic math, right? Even if you have one, one fighter, right? They have two corners. That's three people, right?
Yeah.
And then one, same thing on the other side. We've got six people, then a referee and three judges. So you're just in one fight. That's 10 COVID tests that you're going to have to do.
Dang. Yep. That's crazy.
Right. And everybody asks, like, why is Bellator doing it? Why is UFC doing it? Again, Bellator is owned by Paramount. Paramount, and the UFC is worth close to $4 billion, and that's why. And funny enough, whether it be UFC or even the WWE in pro wrestling, they have their own facilities, right?
Yeah.
They're uniquely situated amongst other. I mean, if the NBA had their own facility or whatever, we would have seen the NBA back, even though they had a bunch of COVID, positive tests amongst their players, But those two unique fighting sports were the ones situated because they had a venue, And then,
Right.
in the WWE, I'm not speaking out of school, but it is a choreographed athletic deal. It's not a competition. They don't have to go under the confines of a state athletic commission, so they can do whatever they want,
Right.
So
Dang.
and that's when most people are like, oh well, why doesn't stuff come back to California or Kansas or Alabama? And it's like the state athletic commission. That's the big one, because if the state is shut down, so too is the athletic commission.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. But I mean, in terms of like your own career as a coach and trainer, what have been some of your highlights? Obviously, if you're a coach of any kind, like we were kind of alluding to before, and Jesse brought up, you take more pride in your students and fighters' accomplishments than you do your own. So what have been some of the most gratifying parts to the game that has affected you personally?
Well, I got one guy, like I said, his name was TJ. He fought the kickboxer. That was, to me, was huge because I remember him calling me and talking about how, hey, Bellator wants me to fight. I'm like, all right, cool. He's like, it's Gabriel Varga. And I'm like, oh my God. I was just like, dude, I was like, he's like, you know who he is? I was like, of course I know who he is. Everybody knows who he is. And he's like, I was like, well, what do you want to do? He says, what do you think? I was like, no. Do you think you can beat him? He's like, I know I can beat him. And I said, all right, well, then let's go fight him. And so TJ basically put on a jiu-jitsu clinic on him, and it was pretty funny. You know, he broke his orbital. But I was hearing backstage of I don't know if it was his corner or maybe some people talking just like, all he did was hold him down and beat on him. And I'm like, well, he's a world champion kickboxer. We're not going to stand with the world champion kickboxer. It's mixed martial arts. Let's mix it up. So that was huge for us just because it was a big old, kind of like screw you to them. But trying to think. I don't know what really, I mean, every one of my guys when they fight is special to me. Just like the trip, driving up there, weigh-ins, every practice is, special, I think, but yeah, I had another kid. He doesn't fight anymore, but he was a little stud wrestler at 135, and he was fighting this one kid in Kansas City, and this kid was bragging about how he's never been taken down in a fight. He's never been taken down in a fight. And my friend completely went past the game plan and it literally took him down 6 times in the first like 3 minutes of the fight. I'm like, what? And just keeps letting him back up. And he says, I just had to prove a point. Like, he was a heck of a wrestler. So that was pretty cool. But
well, I love that principle that you employed with Varga, because I mean, obviously, I mean, we've seen it, a litany of times where, the striking coach will be like, oh, well,
right.
let's just strike with them, right? And it's like, you kind of know when you're too big for your britches, like, we got to win.
Let's win and go to the next one. Like, that's what I want to do. And so, so this new organization just came about, it's called America's Fighting Championship. Not America, Americas. So they're planning on going to like South America, USA versus South America. So right now we're doing USA versus Mexico. Basically, my guy's the main event. I got 4, I think there's 3 or 4 other guys that I've actually trained with in the Midwest that are going over. So there's going to be a group of us. But it's in Cancun on September 19th. And they're looking for, I think Acapulco might be in November. They might have some other place like Cabo might be later down the road because they have no restrictions. Obviously, over there it's Mexico. But who's the Alaskan guy, the Alaskan champ?
Oh, Tyson Duckworth.
Yeah,
there's fights going on in Cancun, bud. So
tell him he can hit me up, and I can introduce him to all the right people to get him down over there if he wants. But
let's make it happen, Captain.
Yeah,
so there you go, Tyson. Yeah, man. No, and you know what? Combate Americas, they did kind of similar, and they didn't necessarily go country versus country, but they basically would run shows, in different parts of. And he says he's in. We've got a confirmation. So yes, once we get off, check your DMs. We'll make this happen. Sure. We'll make this happen. So yeah, I love that. So yeah, man. Obviously, they try to do like I guess different countries, right? And basically focus on the ethnic backgrounds of whether it be the Ecuadorians, Brazilians, or whatever, and just have a place where they could display their flags. Americans, like whatever, but never really like kind of hyping on the country versus country thing. I grew up a wrestling fan, so I think it's intriguing, the Mexican versus, the U.S. or whatever, because, in the 90s, they had Canada versus USA. They had Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart and whatever. And there was no real problem there, right? No. U.S. and Canada have never really had a problem, but they made you believe. Right? So again, if America's Fighting Championship can do it, man, I am super intrigued.
Yeah, and they just announced today that Johnny Big Rigs is he's like the big I think he's one of the big spokesmen for us now, and so he's going to be at the fights commentating and stuff, and probably training with some of us over there. So that'll be pretty cool. I haven't seen him for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah, former UFC interim champion. Went
Right.
toe to toe with GSP. Man, Johnny Hendricks.
He
Holy
won that
smokes!
one. He won that one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean
I
the
mean,
scars in GSP's face will tell the story for sure.
for real.
Now, you were mentioning, right? You were mentioning about traveling the towns and getting fighters ready and what have you. What are some of the funnest stories? Because I know it's always fun to be dealing with fighters when they're cutting weight, isn't it?
Man, you're gonna get me in trouble in this one. These guys, most of these guys are the biggest babies ever. Especially my guys. They hate ice baths. Uh, we've had to lock them in the saunas and just wait, But I like, so now I like going in the saunas with them, and I'm actually back in shape, so I can go on their runs with them and everything. But I don't I don't have like super funny stories about that. It just I would yell at them just to stop, suck it up, man. I had one kid that made me really mad because he was supposed to have at least cut 6 pounds because I was 2 states away. So he was supposed to be cut 6 pounds that night before, and then I was going to finish the other 5 pounds with him the next day. And he was 12 pounds over during weigh-in day. And so, man, I put him in the sauna. I got one of those assault bikes. He called me everything in the book. His dad thought that his son was going to kill me. And just like, man, like he made the weight, but man, he was just like he was so happy when he got that, the food in him the night after weigh-ins. He was just making love to that food.
And how did the fight go for him that night?
That night he lost. But it happens.
Well, when he was cursing you up a storm, maybe he should have. I heard the saying; it's one of my favorites. But make your words soft and sweet, just in case you have to eat them later.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
but shout out to that guy. Shout out to that guy because, of course, anybody that steps into a ring or a cage or even on the mats of jiu-jitsu are warriors
Yep.
to the umpteenth degree. So, not disparaging you at all, but
Yep.
just saying, maybe you could have took it a little bit easier on Coach Ryan, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm here for these guys.
No, man. There's a funny weigh-in story, and I'm not going to mention any names, but they know who they are, right? And I've interviewed them both. But let me set the scene. The LA Coliseum, the former home of the Raiders, the Rams, and the Olympics, right? And there are fights that are going on there, right? Right in the entryway to the Coliseum, right? So weigh-ins happen here in California. They're the same day weigh-ins if you're an amateur, right?
Right.
This fighter, came in a couple pounds overweight. So the commissioner was just like, you know what? We'll do whatever. Just lose that X amount of pounds, right? So he's running around, blah, blah, blah. And then his coach goes, hey, why don't you drop your chones, right? So he drops it, whatever, to weigh in, right? And they call him to the scale, right? He's running butt naked. And the commissioner has his notebook, his clipboard, right, to mark the weight. And he gets paintbrushed. Just yes.
Dang.
It's just the face and the whatever. And I just look and oh my gosh.
Oh,
Yeah. So
I'd be
it
so
happens.
mad. I did have one of these guys. There weren't any of my fighters, but he wore whitey tighties, real tight whitey tighties to weigh in. He was probably like 125 pounds. He was, he sneezed and he actually crapped himself, and nobody said anything. And he weighed in, and after he weighed in, he turned around to pick up his pants so the whole crowd could see him. was pretty bad.
Well, you know what? None other than Justine Kish, who has a dubious distinction on her. She says, "Hey, shit happens." And sometimes, yeah,
That's
sometimes,
right.
man.
Yep.
So, so yeah. Um, no, but in terms of obviously, 2020 is a crazy year, right? But
Yeah.
what was the year going to look like for your fighters prior to this? Like let's go back into the DeLorean and say February of 2020. What did the pipeline look for all of the pupils at Mosburg Boxing?
So after TJ won on Bellator, we had like 3 to 4 fight offers from them. We were supposed to go to California. We were supposed to go to, I think, in Connecticut or wherever they're at right now. And then all that fell through, obviously. And of course, my amateurs, they all had almost back-to-back weekends. Like this August, I had a guy doing a pro boxing match debut. Then I had a guy doing a MMA fight. Then the next weekend, I had a bare knuckle fight. Weekend after that, I had a kickboxing fight, and they all just. It was just weird when like you want to go there just because that to me is vacation. Dealing with a bunch of fighters crying about weight and everything and what they can eat. Like to me, driving with that's just I don't know, just brotherhood, I guess, or like I think you said before, you punch somebody in the face, you're bleeding with them, you're sweating with them, you'll probably have a beer with them afterwards. But some of those people are my best, best friends, best people I know. So it kind of hurt me a little bit just because it's like, well, crap, now what are we going to do? I mean, we keep training, but sometimes they get discouraged. Like, what are we training for? This world's going to, is it getting better? I mean, I don't know.
No, no, absolutely, and that's one of the cool things that has happened. I mean, obviously there aren't a lot of cool things that have happened because of the COVID situation. Obviously, small businesses are kind of going in the circling the drain. Unfortunately, people's health, same thing. Just the security of everything, right? But
Right.
with combat sports, coming back, right, and whether it be the UFC or Bellator, all of my friends that were waiting for the call from one of the big shows, that happened more times during COVID than any other
Yeah.
time in history. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's awesome. Yep.
Now, in terms of obviously you had a couple guys training for BKFC. Obviously, I mean they're the talk of the town, the toast of the combat sports world right now because the big signing of Paige Van Zandt. They
Yeah.
had the Poly Malignaggi, Artem Lobov night and whatever, and showing the superiority of BKFC amongst other combat sports things, right? So uh, what is the training like? I mean, do you guys have a different training plan than a traditional boxing match because the way that the gloves are taped, or I mean,
Well, I mean,
what's the
look
mindset?
at right. Look at Paulie. How I grew up watching Paulie, so he always gets hated on. But he's a boxer and he fought a brawler, and like to me, bare knuckle just feels like kind of like. I mean, there's definitely games to it, levels to it. I mean, but if you go in there trying to just point somebody on bare knuckle, you're just going to probably get knocked out by one of those guys. Uh, I don't think the train's different. He's an MMA guy too, so he's doing uh, more boxing with little gloves instead of the big gloves. We're it's not dirty boxing. We're trapping more on the arms. You trap the arms and kind of move around, circle them a little bit. You can clinch for I think it's for 3 seconds now, so you can clinch a little bit, do some uppercuts. So really, the training's not that. The kids, I wouldn't let anybody do bare knuckle unless you're kind of crazy, and he's definitely crazy. Uh, but Paige Van Zandt, I'm just excited just to probably see her at one of the venues. But if I was her husband, oh, what are you doing? I would not let my wife get all mangled. Oh, there's some girls in that bare knuckle that are just killers. like savages.
Oh yeah, I mean, just last week had Christine Ferreira, who is a
Yeah.
former champion, right? And
Yep. She's my
it's
favorite.
it's crazy because I mean, obviously, there's that the rematch with Rowdy Beck Rollins,
Yeah.
right? That is down the pipeline. We could see that again, and even more ferocious than the first time, right? Then there's waiting in the wings is Christine Ferreira, who again, she's not the champ at this current moment, but all
I think
intents
she
and
will be.
purposes, she's getting another crack at it,
Yeah.
probably in the next year or so, right? So there's a litany of top tier talent that are going to bare knuckle fighting, and that are bare knuckle fighters themselves, right?
Right.
So it's such a cool thing, for people. I mean, look, Chris Leben is having a career resurgence, longtime MMA great,
Yeah.
really a great, and I don't use that lightly, and he's having a career resurgence because, I mean, his career in MMA, unfortunately, unceremoniously didn't turn out the way that he wanted it towards the end, and he's literally gotten real new life, and what it does
Right.
for him as a person, he's beaten addiction, he has a family now, wife and kid, and whatever, and something to fight for. So it's cool to see him, on the other side of all of the bad
Right.
stuff and begin to maybe have a crack at another combat sports championship before it's
Yeah.
all said and done.
Yeah. I've met Chris before in Vegas. I mean, this was when he was still in the UFC, so this was when he was really wild then, but he was a cool guy, man. He was cool. And then the guy that actually beat him in bare knuckle, Dakota Cochran, he's from out of Omaha, Nebraska. I actually got to train with him a few times, and he's one of the ones that's just a tough. I mean, obviously he fought Chris Leben, but he kicked me in practice one day, and I thought I was going to throw up, but I ended up just pissing out blood for about the next 4 hours. Yeah, he hits hard.
Oh, it's ham hocks, right? And it's funny because here in California, all right, Frank Trigg, Frank Trigg, and Chris Leben are referees, right? And you can kind of tell the person's familiarity, the fighter's familiarity with combat sports or MMA, because they will pull. I mean, look, Jason Herzog's a black
Yeah.
belt. Mike
Yep.
Beltran's a black belt. Herb Dean is a black belt. David Michael Bell is a black belt. Like, and then again, you've got, when you don't have those two, you've got Leben and Trigg, right? And these 125 pounders are getting pulled off by said gentleman, right, as a referee, and then they're gonna get into these guys' face. I'm all like, you don't know who the hell, like, you are literally at the
Yeah.
footnote of hell. You don't want to enter that door.
No.
Not one iota.
Nope. God, no. That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know Chris Leben was reffing. That's
Yeah,
cool.
and and funny enough, so I mean, he's a ref for Camo, which is the California Amateur. So it's
Okay.
the amateur organization here in California, right? So both him and Trigg do the Camo fights along with a lot of the other guys. I think Herb has kind of just done UFC and Bellator for the time being, but you could still see them, basically
Right.
giving the rules meetings to amateur fighters. And again, the coaches will know who they are and have trained with these guys. But the fighters, if you're a 22-year-old kid,
Right.
and you're like,
Yeah.
I just want to fight, right?
Yeah.
And then again, you're getting in the face of Frank Trigg and Chris Leben.
So we were at the fights this weekend, and we had a bunch of like young kids. Like, man, I felt so old. Some of these kids I thought were like 15, but they're like 18. But Matt Hughes was there, and I don't know how many kids just walked right past him. It was crazy. I was like, what are you doing? So you know who this is? Legend.
Wow. Like, talk to me about that event, right? Because that's an event that you and Aaron both attended. Aaron, I believe, was a commentator or announcer of some sort.
He was an announcer, yeah.
Right.
He announced the fights. He was awesome. He rocked it as usual.
So what was the event, and how did it look.
So it was, I think it was called Max Championships, but it was out of Poto, Oklahoma. I think it's originally like a Fort Smith, Arkansas showing, but they went to Poto, Oklahoma. Never been there, never even heard of that place till we went there. Uh, but the venue was awesome. The promoter was great. We got, even though we were behind enemy lines, but it was pretty cool. When after my fighter lost, somebody threw a water bottle, and I kind of just saw it corner of my eye, and I just kind of went, and missed my head. I thought there, I was like, man, rough crowd, but I think it was actually a crowd getting in a fight during one of the fights. But it was awesome. Matt Hughes kind of talked, and he was sitting at the table and everything. I mean, small town. But so I went to, I trained Friday in Kansas City at Glory MMA, or actually this one's in Lee Summit, and then they had their fights that night, and that's FAC, which is a huge venue in Kansas City, and it was, that was on UFC Fight Pass. It was awesome. Every fight was phenomenal, and then I woke up at 6 a.m. and drove straight through all the way to Oklahoma to my guy to corner him, and so it was a tiring weekend, but man, it was well worth it since we haven't been to a fight forever.
And what did the crowd look like? Because we saw, I believe it was Oklahoma, where they had a 8-man one night tournament for like a kickboxing, but they had probably, I would say, like a 20% capacity. And everybody was kind of socially distanced. So, what was the scene this weekend?
So Friday, since it was in a big place, did a lot of social distancing between all the seats. In the parking lot, they even social distanced the cars, how you parked them, which I didn't think that was necessary. But I mean, we had to walk way farther. But anywho, and then you got Oklahoma, where I don't know if it was on Indian reservation or what, but I'm pretty sure it was, because that house was packed. That was like nothing changed. It was just like the old days, screaming, beer drinking, everybody's yelling, and it was awesome. Good feeling. It was fun.
No, man, it's but and that's the crazy thing, right? There's a catch-22, right? Like,
Right.
with the UFC, holding fights, or Bellator or whatever, people are like, oh well, they shouldn't. I lost my job. I lost my business.
Right.
They shouldn't have fights. The last thing that we want to see is sports and whatever, right? So there's that side of the argument, right? But the other side of the argument is, if you're kind of obliging in all of the rules that are set
Right.
by your local and federal and state legislature, then why can't that happen, right? Like,
Right.
what are we
Yeah.
really doing? Because if we just had one of my old coaches. He owns a gym here in Pasadena, California, right? And in Pasadena, Old Town Pasadena, where they have the Rose Parade and all that jazz, right? There are restaurants that can have basically table seating out on the sidewalk, right? They pretty much shut down the sidewalk just so you could have outdoor dining. But he got the cops called on him for teaching a class
Right.
in, like, literally a social distance cardio kickboxing class at 6 a.m. in the morning at a public park. So, you
Yeah.
know,
I don't get it. Most people, I mean, I'm one of these people. I need this stuff. Like, it just calms me down. It's like me. It's my drug to train people. All my guys. It's like a drug. It's healthy for them. We had the bare knuckle. He's Army vet, and I'm sure he has some PTSD because, like I said, he's a crazy kid. So he needs this. It calms him down. Uh, there's a lot of people out in this world that need this sport, and they need to watch it. Just, I mean, you don't have to train it. It calms me down when I watch the fights. So
no, absolutely, and that's the thing. going back to that kind of initial conversation that we had about, what would anybody be doing if this sport didn't exist, right? And I mean, this podcast wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
I
Nope.
definitely wouldn't be doing this, but where would I be doing? And that question, the answer to that question scares the ever living crap out of me, right? And and I don't even have as much skin in the game as putting my life savings on the line to purchase a brick or mortar place for people to get their emotions out and their aggression out and learn a new skill and what have you. These are people. I mean, my first jiu-jitsu coach was when he started his gym, was a blue belt. Now, obviously, this was like the late 90s, early
Right.
2000s, and what a blue belt then versus what it does now is completely different. But these are people, he built up a business within the last 15, 20 years, and then all of a sudden he can't. Even when he abides by their rules, you can't. So it's just like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Right. I agree. Yeah. I had I just kind of know the people, kind of like your buddy. They own a gym in Little Rock, and he was just talking about. He's like, I'm not closing because I have people in here that absolutely need this. This is for their stress reliever. They need this for their marriage counseling. They, whatever, their job, and literally got shut down 3 days later because he made kind of like a public announcement by a lady that lived like 6 states over. Like, just I don't know how she had the authority, but I mean, she obviously knew somebody just to do it because she could. But
Yeah. And you know what the crazy thing about it is? This is the absolute truth. It doesn't matter, and not to make it about politics or anything like that. Democrats, Republicans here, right? As all of these businesses are shutting down, they have yet to miss a paycheck.
yeah, right.
Just
Yep.
saying, right? So,
Yep.
yeah, it's just weird. But again, these are reasons why we can all come together, and kind of talk about the experiences and help learn. And regardless of, oh, I hear that something's going on in Kansas. I hear something's going on in Alaska, whatever. Well, here's a cool even keel way to kind of figure out how everyone is doing and how we're all dealing with it, and um, encourage each other to do the best they can for themselves and their families.
Yeah, 100%. I love it.
Now, your time away from combat sports, like what are you doing? What are some hobbies of one Ryan Mosburg?
Man, so right when COVID hit, I was with my kid all the time, and I just focused on training my guys so much, even though we didn't have any fights coming up, and I got fat. I actually had one of my shout out to TJ Britton, that my we were at practice one day. He just looks at me and says, "Dog, you getting fat." And I got so mad. I remember my dad calling me, and I'm like answering the phone. I was like, "Man, TJ called me fat." It pissed me off. My dad's like, "Well, I'm glad he did because you're getting a little fat, son." And so, man, I basically put down the bottle for been 5 weeks now. I mean, not to brag, toot my own horn, but I dropped already like 21 pounds, and I'm back into shape and everything. And so I feel good. So I've been working out every morning, just grinding before I wake up extra early, like at 3 a.m. just to work out, just to get mine out of the way. And then I can spend time with my wife, my daughter, my fighters. So I don't have to do it at nighttime anymore. So it's been awesome.
That that's brilliant. And again, you've taken this negative situation and turned it into a way that is positive for not just you, your family, but again the community around you. So and it's situations like this that kind of make us reassess what we were doing before all of this happened and what's really important. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, no, thank you. But my other hobbies, oh man, I feel like I don't do anything anymore. uh,
Same.
yeah, before before we moved over to Arkansas, me and my wife lived in Hawaii, and so that's where I fell in love with jiu-jitsu over there. it was kind of like I've never been to Brazil, but that's what I feel like it would have been. I got my blue belt over there, just training. And I was like the outsider, and then I started doing more MMA with those guys, and I worked on a fishing charter boat, so I fished every day. Every day, I got paid to fish and take people scuba diving and snorkeling and stuff. And so my hobbies were diving and fishing. Now it's like I haven't done that for about 2.5 years, so I need to get back to it. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I myself am half Fijian, so the different
okay,
types of fish that you would find where you are in Arkansas might not be the ones that you would find in Hawaii,
no,
unfortunately. But
no.
but I mean, there's still fishing going on, so there's
Yeah,
that.
yep. A lot smaller fish too down here.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fish down in Arkansas, they make for a pretty damn good fry. So just saying that's one thing you can't do with
Yep,
Hawaiian fish,
yep,
not at all.
right.
So
Yep,
there's that. No coconut milk or pineapple juice here. It's just like cornbread and cornmeal. Let's do this.
exactly. My dad makes beer batter with the cornmeal. We put it on our crappie and catfish. It's awesome. Yeah,
I'm just saying. You said beer batter. I'm in. Like,
yeah.
I might do a one-way ticket over there to Arkansas, my
Come on down.
man. Dude. So again, Everett, Richard Osmer says, "Hey Ryan, huge fan of your team. So shout out to Everett. Everett is the man.
Yeah,
Scheduled a lot of interviews for this guy here. So shout out to Everett. But what does that make you feel? Like, guys and girls on your respective team are making a difference, that they have fans, that you yourself are making a difference in not just like the notoriety, but the difference in the
right.
lives of the people that you're coaching and training. What does that mean to you?
Means everything, really. Like one of my guys explained how I'm different from other coaches because he's like, you don't really like tell us, no, this is the wrong way. You can't do that because that's how I grew up. Like, oh, I want to try southpaw. They're like, no, you're orthodox. You stay orthodox. Now all my guys, they'll be, they started orthodox or southpaw and they get hit. Guess what? Their footing goes the other way. Now they can still fight in orthodox or southpaw. Uh, so to me, that's cool because I just take what they're good at and I tweak it. And I do believe in myself now. Like before, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of good at this. And now it's like I can absolutely make you so much faster in your hands, like 100%. I believe in myself now. Took me 33 years to do it, but I do it. I know it now.
Well, like the Amy Grant song, there's a lyric in it and says it takes a little time sometimes to get the Titanic turned back around, right? And sometimes it does, and it's the process, to get to where you are and feel comfortable in your skin and what you're doing. It's worth every bit of toil and sweat and blood and all of the crazy stories in between. It's worth it when you kind of get it all together. You put it all together.
Right. Yeah.
Now, for those who haven't followed what you're doing with Mosburg Boxing and what you're doing just in general, where can they find you on social media, my man?
Instagram, just Mosburg Boxing, at Mosburg Boxing.
Excellent. And last but very not least, obviously you've been in the game a long, long time, right? But there's people that have helped you get to where you are. So let's get some shout outs out of the way.
Man, a lot of my fighters, there's too many to really name, but like just a few, like Emery, McReynolds, Theron Crouch, TJ Britton, man, Jeff Hines, my dad, Zach Zumwalt, Kyle Gunther, Corey Hines, just a few of the local fighters. But the coaches, like I said before, like, I actually manned up and called my buddy Danny Molina over in Omaha because he runs his own gym. And I just, man, he was so awesome to guide me and just in the business side of it. And then I went did Kraus and James Krause, and I did a few of his practices, and then it just opened my mind and more. And like literally, like if I think I'm a good coach now, like I think I fail my people. Like to me, I have to go to these other gyms and I train under these guys. Just I'll do an open mat and just listen to them, train them, and then I bring all that crap back to our little podunk town over here. You know what I mean? And like it works. There's a lot of people. You know, my wife, she's God bless her. Just you know, one of these days I'll get a big boy job. She says, but she lets me do what I do. And my kid, she's always with me. My daughter. So she always sees me training. She's like I said, she's 2. So every time she sees my boxing bag, she does punch, and she's over there punching my bag or hitting my mitts, and she's always with me. So it'll be cool. And I told my guys, you better make it big now because once my kid asks me to start training her, it's over. I'll be done.
Well, you know what? They've been put on notice. That's what I'm saying. You know, and the one last comment, we've got Todd Mosburg over there on YouTube saying, "Love you, champ. You're an old man." So that's your dad.
Yeah, I'm surprised he even knew how to work this thing.
Shout out to you, Mr. Mosburg, because you embrace a hell of a good son in Ryan. So good job. As a father myself, and Ryan is one as well, you did a good one with this guy here. So I'm just saying. But Ryan, dude, thank you so much. This has been an honor and a privilege. And man, we can't wait to see what you and your guys end up doing. And you know, we've got the ear out to your daughter. She's 2 now, but my goodness, there's some pancration fights or something like that. And I'm sure she's got a mean right hook.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. Again, this is According to Woods with Ryan 12 Gauge Mosburg, and we are out.